welcome back to our next episode here in the vineyard. This is Gavilan Hills Vineyard here at Paradise Ranch, and we are in the process of trying to get some grapes this year, which is turning out to be a little challenging, but we're doing pretty well actually. Our goal was to restrict the growth. Right now, I'm going to set a goal at 1,000 pounds of Grenache and 500 to 700 pounds of Cabernet Sauvignon. Later on, 3-4 months down the road, when we get some grapes, we'll be talking about the winemaking and what we're going to be doing with that. But this is our update for July 2024. Thanks for joining us. I want to welcome you back. It's currently the middle of July. Now, I promised I was going to do updates every month, but I missed April, May, and June. Now, the problem was I got really busy. We had several fairly big events here at the vineyard. One of them being a pretty big wedding, and the wedding turned out really nice. We had a lot of good comments from it. People were really impressed with the way the wedding turned out, the look, the feel, having the vineyard behind them. So we got a little distracted over the last couple months and have not been able to update everyone on what we've been doing for the last few months in the vineyard. So I apologize. I'm going to try and do this better. I know it's July and we've got some nice heat going on, but let's see what we can do to get back on track here. So the first update is I want to talk about spraying. Back in the first part of the year, in the early part of spring, late winter, as you know, if you've been watching this, we were doing spraying about every 2 weeks. Now, it would actually wash away my spray. So once the rain stopped, and it was about April time frame, I moved to spraying every month, about every month, maybe a little less, but anyway, every 3 to 4 weeks. We were spraying for a couple of things. One was the problem we had with the Grape Leaf Skeletonizer. Those pretty little purple yellow bugs that really got to us last year. If you've watched the other videos, we were spraying the trunks, and we've been spraying to try and make sure those things didn't come back. And good news is they have not come back to the level they were last year. I have had I've noticed a few leaves here and there where we've had some of the GLS on them. They were the small, just starting out worm size. We were able to get rid of them, 3 or 4 spots, but other than that, things have gone really well with that part. Here's a leaf that was damaged by a Grape Leaf Skeletonizer. You can see there's one right there in the back and this one here. I just happened to find that just now, and I'm going to take a look. See right there? You can see I still have some of those little bad boys out here. So there's one there. This one has it. There's nothing on that one. I saw another one right here. Yeah, see, really tiny right now, and I'm hoping this thing will focus a little bit, but maybe not. But you can see him, right? Yeah, it's not going to focus, is it? Not going to focus, sorry. It's right there. So we did find a little bit of GLS in the vines. The second part of the spraying we were doing, or have been doing, is for humidity. Now, ever since about June, we've had high temperatures, and I mean by the middle 90s, but the one thing we have had during that time frame is we've had high humidity. And what I mean by high humidity is anywhere from 30, 35 up to 50% humidity, which is very, very unique for us. We typically will have humidities in the 10 to 15, maybe 20, but not 40 or 50. That's just not the norm around here. And because of the high humidity, I was worried about powdery mildew. We've got our vineyard somewhat not encircled, but we've got a lot of roses around the front part of the vineyard. And we noticed it was 1st of June, I think. Yeah, it was around Memorial Day. we noticed we had powdery mildew showing up on the roses. Now roses are an indicator that we could get powdery mildew later. It's one of the things, powdery mildew will show up on the roses before they actually show up on the grapes. And so we were starting at that point to spray 7 or sulfur to try and get rid of, or that's not the right word, try to stop or keep the powdery mildew at bay, keep it away. Now we don't have any rain. It has been overcast a couple days back in June, so we were somewhat worried about it. Now, with no rain, I don't know if we're going to get powdery mildew. There just isn't enough moisture in the air, but we've been spraying anyway. So we've been spraying sulfur every month or so. We're supposed to do it every 2 weeks, but it's really been every 3 to 4. And we've been spraying for BT to try and get rid of the bugs and those GLS. So we've been pretty successful with the spraying mechanism over the last 3 months. Now some of our colleagues down in Temecula, where they have the same a lot more overcast than we do, they had an infestation this year of mealybugs. They have mealybugs all over the place being carried by those, what do they call, the grasshopper, glassy winged grasshoppers, I think. They've been carrying them around quite a bit down there. We're quite a ways away, being 20 miles away from Temecula. We are doing everything we can to make sure we don't get any chance of getting mealybugs here. So good luck with those guys down there with the mealybugs, but we've lucked out so far. So right about around Memorial Day weekend, around Memorial Day, right after, we started getting some really warm weather in the 90s. And I was not watching the vines very closely because of all the parties and preparation we were doing, and I was not watering the plants enough. Once I realized that we had a problem with the vines, as you can see, there's no tendrils on the top of some of these shoots. These shoots should have tendrils and they should be reaching out. Those tendrils were not there because I was not watering enough. So what I ended up doing that went for about 2 to 3 weeks. So I ended up turning around and increased the water. I'm right now watering twice as much as I was in June. And as you can see, the tendrils are starting to come back. The leaves at the end of the shoots are now starting to look like they should. So I made a little mistake when the heat hit and I wasn't ready for it. I also wanted to do a little quick update on our Mission grapes. In the last video, we talked about our Mission grapes, that we were able to get some clippings off of some historical 150-year-old, 125-year-old Mission grapes out of Pechanga Indian Reservation. Of those we did, it looks like we only got about 25 that took root, which is pretty good. So we're going to have about 25 Mission grapes to plant sometime next year, probably in February. So stay tuned. We're looking forward to it. It's going to be exciting. I wasn't going to talk much about the shoot thinning we were doing in April, but I decided I'm going to. Here's a short little clip on the shoot thinning we were doing in April. And then I'll show you what we're doing now as a update to the shoot thinning and what needs to be done now in July to keep the vines in check. So here, take a look. So let's do a little canopy management today. This is a Grenache. It's 2 years old. We're going into our 3rd year of growth. Last year, I actually cut this vine right here. And what happened during the late year, I got a shoot that came up on the right side, and I got a shoot that came up here on the left side. And I was able to lay them down to make really nice cordons for this year. Now we had bud break about 3 weeks ago on these vines. They're 2 to 4, 5, 6 inches maybe, all the shoots. So I need to do some shoot thinning. So let's take a look at this, and I'm going to try and show you up close what we're doing. Right here I've got a shoot coming up that looks really nice. Right next to it, this shoot, I don't want this shoot. Let's get rid of that one. There's one on the bottom as well. And then we take a look on top. I've got a shoot that's really good here and one there. I'm going to keep this shoot in the back. I'm going to try and keep this shoot in the back and get rid of that. Now I've got, take a look, I've got 3 shoots coming out of this spur right here. The goal this year is to have 1 shoot out of each spur. I want to have 1 shoot because these are young plants going into their 3rd year. Take a look at this one right here. You can see I've got 3 shoots coming off of this one. Got one on the bottom, so let's remove that. I've got another one that's down low and another one coming up high. So I'm going to actually get rid of the one in the back, only because it's a little bit farther away from this one here. We go along, there's one here in the back. Let's get rid of this one. Gives you another spur. On this spur here, again, I've got 3 shoots coming up out of this spur. So let's get rid of this one, and we'll get rid of this one. By getting rid of those few spurs there, I got a hand width apart more or less. These two are kind of close together, but I'm going to let them go. Now, the next part of this, there's a big shoot in the back. You can't really see. There's a big spur in the back. I'm going to cut this spur off, and that gives me a nice spur shooting up right here. So I've got a spur right here, and I've got a spur right there, hand widths apart. If I come to the next one, I've got a shoot sitting here in the back. Let's get rid of this one. By doing that, it gives me to the next spur, which again has 3 shoots coming out of it. It's hard to see, but there's 3 shoots coming out of this. Let's get rid of the bottom one, and I'm going to get rid of the one coming out of the side. So I've got it coming out right, oh, there's another one right there. There's 4 shoots coming out of that spur. And then when you get to the next one here, it's in the back, down low. Let's get rid of that. So far we're doing pretty good. I've got a nice shoot coming up into the catch wire, a shoot coming up into the catch wire, evenly spaced about 4 fingers apart. Not bad so far. So we go to the next one. Again, this one has 3. Let's get rid of them. There's one on the bottom. There's a nice one coming up there, and the bigger one on the side. So let's get rid of this one here. It gives you a nice little spur there. Then I've got one sitting in the back there. We'll cut this one off. Clear that out. Comes to the next spur where I've got one spur sitting right there. Whoops. Can't see, but back here in the back, I had a big one in the back. I've got another one here in the back. I got to cut this one off. Get rid of this one. I know this is hard to see, but I got a shoot coming out down the bottom. Let's get rid of that shoot. I've got another shoot over here on the bottom. Let's get rid of that. And again, I got 3 shoots coming up out of this spur. I really don't like the fact that this spur is really thin. See how thin that spur is right there? It's a real thin spur. So let's get rid of this shoot. And I'm actually going to cut this spur off. And what that does is that gives me a nice heavy spur right here coming up, or shoot coming up right there. So that works out pretty nice. Now these particular vines are actually up against the back horse pasture, sitting on a chain link fence. So we're right now at the end of this cordon. It's right there. But if we take a look, I've got a spur coming up right here. I've got a shoots in the back. I've got shoots on the bottom down here, and I've got shoots sticking up here. So first of all, let's get rid of this one on the bottom. I'm going to remove that spur in the back. Let's cut this spur out in the back. So that gives me a shoot, hands width, shoot, hands width. I've got one here, but I've also got one in the back that's a little better. I don't like them being this close together at the end, so let's get rid of this one. And when you look at the end, I've got a little shoot right there at the end. There's actually a shoot right there at the end. So now we've got it. So now we can take a look at this half of this vine. I've got Some nice shoots. They're hand width apart all along. I've got one shoot on each spur. That should be pretty nice for the year. Start over. So I wanted to show you what that vine looks like 3 months later. So it's been 3 months since we did that little bit of trimming and shoot thinning. And so if we take a look at this vine now, you can see these are the spurs that I had set up all through there. Now there's one right there. I don't want to take that one out. Get rid of that. You can see they're hands width apart. I got it set up where we only had one shoot coming up on each one, so the grapes are not as thick as they could be. The other problem we had was this one has a little bit of the shatter that I talked about earlier, where the grapes didn't really fill in. If you look at these, I'm going to probably be cutting these grapes off here because they don't look good. They've got a little brown to them, so we'll cut those off and we'll keep this bunch, the bunch in the back. We'll keep that cluster right there and the rest of these clusters. So that's what that looks like 7 months, July. That's what that looks like exactly 3 months after we did the shoot thinning back in April. So since April, and the wedding got done in June, so really it's been most of June and July. We've been going through every single plant and doing some thinning. I've been cutting a lot of grapes out where we have too many grapes. We've been cutting out the shoots that don't have any grapes on them and that are growing downward, just to keep it thinned out and keep the shoots growing with the grapes on them on a regular basis. So typically I just go through the vines and look at the grapes, see if there's anything that could be cleaned up. If there's too many grapes, if there's shoots that aren't supposed to be there. Most of this right here isn't in too bad a shape. There's the end of the other vine. You've got some nice, these are Cabernet Sauvignon grapes. They're in here. Here's a good example. I've got a cluster of grapes right here with an arm. Take a look at that. And I've got a cluster of grapes right here in the back. I've got a third cluster of grapes right here on top. There's a third one coming in. And I want to remove anything where there's three clusters of grapes, just to allow this thing to grow in a lot better. So we've been going through doing that, taking anything that's on the bottom that needs to be taken off, any shoot thinning that's required. We're just taking a look at all these clusters and making sure. So like there's right there, I'm going to leave that one for now, but it's an extra one coming off of a shoot that shouldn't have it. And then right here I've got a cluster here, I've got a cluster, what's this cluster down here? Oh, it's a different shoot. There's a cluster there, there's some clusters here, and I don't like this one that's way up here on top. Yes, I've got a cluster here and I've got a cluster right there. So I've got two clusters down here and I've got this one up here. So I'm going to remove the third one on top. So let's talk real quick about shoot thinning. Along with shoot thinning, typically a lot of the videos and a lot of the recommendations you see is they talk about leaf thinning or leaf pulling. You want to pull leaves off of the grapes so that those leaves, so the grapes can get sun. In this environment, remember we're 95 degrees today. We're going to be hitting 100 all through August. I think this year we're going to be pretty dry and pretty hot. What I don't want to do is I don't want to pull off the leaves on the side where it gets a direct sun. It'll burn, we'll get sunburn. I mean, it'll burn those grapes in no time at all. So most of the time, we don't pull any leaves. We leave as many leaves as we can on to really shade those grapes and keep them from getting sunburned. So these are really southwest facing vines right here. So they're going to get some direct sun. It's a little bit later in the day, so right now they're not getting the direct sun. But notice how many leaves we've got. I've got leaves that are really shooting out to protect these clusters. And if I can keep these leaves around these clusters like this, then I'm not going to have a problem with getting any kind of sunburn. So we don't do leaf thinning here in the Southwest, where we get so much direct sun. I don't want this direct sun giving me a bunch of raisins. I don't want raisins, I want wine. Just one more example. I want to take a look. This vine's not very big. It's got some pretty good growth on it, but notice all of the grapes. The grapes are really nicely shaded. You can really see in there. You can see there's grapes in there, but those grapes are shaded by these leaves. Take a look down there. See those grapes? They're shaded by the leaves, and we've got to have those things shaded. If we don't, they're just going to burn like crazy. And I know back east, and in areas where you have high humidity, not like what we have here, but I'm talking really high humidity, you have a chance of bunch rot and brown rot and powdery mildew. But we don't have that issue. Our issue is really heat and keeping those grapes from getting sunburned and turning into raisins. So I'm going through all the vines, all 300 vines, and just looking at them on a regular basis and making sure we don't have any extra shoots coming up, making sure the grapes that we have on there and the grapes I want to have. Now remember, in my first videos in March and April, when we were doing shoot thinning, we are limiting the number of grapes on a lot of the vines, and we're not allowing the vines to grow as many grapes as they can. We're only allowing one shoot per spur. That allows only a couple clusters per shoot. And there's even a couple vines where I removed all the grapes because the vines weren't big enough. So we've been trying to keep it in check for this year, being that it's a third year of growth. So we did run into a problem, and I had to get some help from some of my colleagues on what the issue was. It primarily was in the Grenache, not the Cabernet. So you take a look at here, we've got some pretty nice Cabernet Sauvignon clusters. The clusters are coming in very nicely. The clusters look pretty full. Not bad at all. However, for probably about, probably more than that, I was going to say 25%, maybe 30 or 40% of the Grenache, I ran into a problem where the clusters, not all of the flowers took. And I wasn't sure why. And I raised it up with a couple of people, and it came up with, I have shatter, it's called shatter or color, which is a French term. What happened was, a bunch of the clusters, the flowers did not take during flowering. So the clusters look like you got about a half as many grapes as you should have in the cluster. And what's interesting, take a look at these right here. Here are some grapes that are nice and plump and full. The clusters are coming in nice. They have some good body to them. They're pretty full. But take a look at the vine right next to them. The vine right next to them has half as many grapes. If you look at them, there's only half as many grapes. A lot of the flowers didn't take. There's nothing wrong with the grapes, as I understand it. It's just that the flowering didn't do what it was supposed to do. Now, there's a couple of reasons. One for that is weather affected them, like it would be high winds or hurricanes or something like that, and we didn't have any of that. Number two, it's something to do with like sprays or insecticides, which I didn't spray during flowering, so it wasn't that. And the third one is rapid shoot growth. So the vines were spending so much time on shoot growth, it took away from the grapes and the flowering, so we have that effect called shatter. And I put a link below and some more information on that. There's not a whole lot you can do for shatter at this point. I did a petiole test that I'm sending in to get some information on that. It could be some nutrient deficiency and maybe boron. But at this point right now, there's not a whole lot I can do. I'm just letting them grow and do their thing. So as of the middle of July, as you can see, it's about 95 today. We've got 40% humidity, 45% humidity, as you can probably see from my shirt that won't stop getting wet and sweating all day. So we're just going along doing what we can. Let me show you some of the grapes here real quick. As you can see, we do have some nice clusters that have come in. If you look in there, you can see that there are some flowers, see right there, that didn't take effect or didn't bloom and didn't produce berries. So we've got some of it in just about all of my plants. So I've got some pretty big issues that I'm gonna have to deal with on this flowering for next year. One last update before I close out this video. This is our showcase vines. These are the vines we've been using when people come over so they can take a look at the grapes and the processes we're using, just to kind of see what's going on. Now, we did make a mistake with these vines. I know some people say we made a mistake by putting them up against the house, but that hasn't affected them. What's affected them is these vines do not get direct sun until 11, 12 o'clock. So because of that, these vines are not producing as much as we would like them to produce. They do have some nice Grenache grapes coming in. There are some Cabernet on the other side, but nowhere near as much as we would expect, only because, you can kind of see on it, only because we don't have much sunlight on this side. Never didn't dawn on me when I was doing it, but you can see we do have some nice growth. I was able to make a little overhang on top, so when you walk through, you've got this nice little canopy. So our showcase vines are not as showcase as we would like them to be. So thanks for joining us. We'll get back to you again next month. Between now and then, all we're doing is just doing some hedge trimming and shoot training and making sure that things are growing up and nice and neat into the catch wires. Now, I did run into some problems over the last few months with some of the trellis system, and what we're going to do is I'm going to do a part 2 to my setting posts to update what the mistakes I made there, but that's on a later video. Again, this is Jeff here at Gavilan Hills Vineyard. Love to have you join us. Subscribe, join in, be part of the journey. Again, this is Jeff. We're out.